spiritual magnificence, just to let you know who you are in the divine scheme of things. And with me on this journey this morning is the inimitable Jean Kennedy. She is a practitioner of religious science. That means that she has taken on as a profession the role of prayer warrior, so to speak. And she prays affirmatively.
I
Yes,
do. And
yes, you
good
do.
morning.
Yes. And then we have our wonderful engineer Manny that's going to keep us right on track this morning. So we're really excited this morning. And we all actually turned our clocks up.
So
And,
everybody showed up on
yeah,
time.
yes, everybody showed up on time and we're ready to go. And you know what we're talking about this morning, what we're going to talk about this morning is being uncommon and not delving into the realm of mediocrity. But we're going to be talking about your uncommon self this morning and how you are able to rise above just being common, but rise above your mediocrity and accept your greatness because you are greatness. You have been created by a creator that's all knowing, all wise, and giving everything. So that means that you, as a offspring of the most divine presence that there is, that you're uncommon. And we're going to explore that for you this morning. Um, this program is brought to you by the Center for Spiritual Enrichment, founded by Reverend Sue Constantinides, a very powerful teacher of what we call New Thought principles. And so we're carrying on that legacy this morning. And once again, we invite you to be with us for the next few minutes, and we're going to delve in to your uncommon nature. And that'll be our purpose this morning. First, however, we have a reading for you about being uncommon that Jean's going to read for you. And then she's going to step into prayer and give us an evocation.
All righty.
Okay.
This morning, the reading is an excerpt from Common Sense, written in 1776 by Thomas Paine. I, I do not choose to be a common man. It is my right to be uncommon if I can. I seek opportunity, not security. I do not wish to be a kept citizen, humbled and dulled by having the state look after me. I want to take the calculated risk to dream and to build, to fail and to succeed. I refuse to barter incentive for a dole. I prefer the challenges of life to the guaranteed existence. The thrill of fulfillment to the stale calm of utopia. I will not trade freedom for benevolence. Beneficence. Nor my dignity for a handout. I will never cower before any master, nor bend to any threat. It is my heritage to stand erect, proud and unafraid, to think and act for myself, to enjoy the benefit of my creations, and to face the world boldly and say, "This, with God's help, I have done." All that is what it means to be an entrepreneur.
That's a powerful statement. Very powerful statement of who we can become. We can rise above being common. So let's step into our prayer work. Okay.
Join me this morning as we recognize and accept for each one of us that God is in all. We are guided by divine wisdom in our lesson today, so everyone listening will benefit and feel their magnificence with the oneness that we call God. We know and accept that our words and thoughts have power, and we recognize that power as God, as the God source within each one of us. And for all of this, I say thank you, God, and I release these words knowing that it's done, and so it is.
Thank you. And our musical inspiration to start us off is God in Everyone by Gary Lynn Floyd and Jamie Lula from the Mile High Church in Denver.
Everything beneath the sun breathes Sings like a harmonium. Pure perfection has begun, shining like a midnight sun.
Oh, really?
Out of darkness I have come. I see God in everyone. Let me be an instrument, guided by an heaven sent. May these grapes of pain ferment, alchemize to love's content, ever be a sacrament, knowing God is my intent. God, let me know your name. Hold me in the same breath as your word. God, I feel you all around. Oh, how you astound me with your grace. Rolling like a thundercloud, let me live my love out loud, standing for mankind and proud, baptized in a holy shroud. Peace be still and know me now. God is in all I have found. God, let me know your name. Hold me in the same breath as your word. Oh God, I feel you all around. Oh, how you astound me with your grace. God, let me know your name. Hold me in the same breath as your word. Oh, how you astound me with your grace. God in everyone, spinning like a prayer field, turning like Ezekiel's wheels, something like a kiss seals the spirit I've become. Oh, knowing what I'm here for, rolling on to distant shores, flowing from the infinite, God in everyone. Out of darkness I have come. I see God in everyone.
Seeing God in everyone, what a powerful concept. And when we acknowledge that the presence of God is what created absolutely everything in and of itself and from itself, then we absolutely know that we are one with each other. Would you say that that's a,
I do.
okay, okay.
I can accept that.
You can accept that? Okay, thank you. So we are one with each other. And as we acknowledge our oneness with each other, we acknowledge that we can become that uncommon individual. Because even though we're one with each other, we still are individualized. We're individual expressions of the one. And so we want to always understand that. You see, in Proverbs, the fourth chapter of Proverbs and the 12th verse, it says that your steps will not be hampered. And we're going to explore that just a little more. Humanity itself changes by turning the milestones or the millstones of old ways and habits to building on the milestones of spiritual growth. Individuality and collectively, as one people under God's leadership, we must proceed down this path. 100 years ago, it was a common belief held by the so-called elite of America that there were only about 400 people in all of America that were worth knowing. And I'm going to say that these were probably the wealthy people, very wealthy people. And there was a writer in the period called O. Henry, and he believed that each person in society, however, was worth knowing and had a story to tell. His classic story, The Gift of the Magi, had its theme in each person giving his most prized possession for their love of the other. We are giving our most prized possession, all of the days of our lives, in exchange for the future, in the strong hope of becoming all that we may become even 100 years ago. And such a strong belief was held by what they called a good first footer. And many people were willing to pay for the right first footer on the first day of the new year. Now,
That's amazing.
Is that amazing?
It
Yes,
is.
it is.
I did not know this story.
Did not know this story. Okay, but first, let's explore it a little bit. So the first person to walk across your doorstep on the first day of the new year was called the first footer. He would be hired to appear at the exact time so as not to trust fate to bring misfortune for the whole year. So we wanted people wanted the right first footer to come through their door, and this would establish, the how the year was going to go for them, whether it was going to go good or in a little bit of fate and not such a good year for them. However, we are right now first footers because we're empowered spiritually. And so what we know is that, let's just know that I'm inviting you this morning to stand poised on the threshold of a new spiritual frontier. And many new thought ideas and messages be the first footer to walk across our doorsteps into our own new positive future. And so these ideas that we have will represent our first feet, so to speak. So we have some really good ideas. You see, God is always walking ahead of us, preparing our way and of good. You see, it's God the good, preparing the way for us, even though sometimes, a lot of times, we think otherwise. But many spiritual traditions hold to the all-inclusive belief that each person has worth and value. And in religious science and unity, our prayer is that each person rises above the lack and limitations of their past to an innate knowing of their worth and value as it stands even right now and stepping into the future. Now, there's a verse in the Bible that has great power concerning your life. I read from Matthew, the 16th chapter and the 19th verse. And Jesus, the great way shower, says, I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven. You see, he is talking directly to us as we spiritually walk toward our future through these pages in the Bible, the scripture, the Bible. Now, you would know that you had something incredibly wonderful working in your life, and you do. It's for all of us. It crosses religious lines and the theology of people. It is the truth about all humankind. We have been given the keys, and here is the key. It is in your prayer time. It is in your time of meditation and devotion and reading inspired works. When you pray affirmatively, what do you decide to bind to yourself? When you pray with a belief, with a knowing without doubt, and you decide to have something in your life, in your future, it's going to be there. There is great spiritual power that happens beyond our physical sight. As humans, we sometimes focus on the negative. I'm going to say also that many times we focus on the negative. We think of ourselves as being bound to our problems and tied to them so tightly that we can't get loose. We try and we try, but we can't do it. But what the master teacher Jesus is telling you is that you are bound to your good. And your good is with you every single day because you're surrounded by this presence called God. And this presence is God the good. So therefore, you are bound to your good. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense.
Makes perfect sense. Okay. So your mind is a vessel of God thought. Your mind can be and is the connecting place with you and God. Your mind is the place where your prayers are answered by inspiration. God answers your prayers through direct inspiration, direct guidance, and direct divine ideas. In order for God to get something to you, God must get it how, Jean?
Through you.
Through you, yes. And the faith must be there. And so for God to get it through you, you must be an open vessel. Now, it may be a small crack in the doubting dam that we have put up, okay? It can be the size of a grain of mustard seed. But there must be a crack in our crusted over, outdated ideas consented to for our free will, or rather by our free will, for God's good to come through. So people, what that means is that we have to let go, as we said earlier, of these outdated ideas that we have consented to, and just simply let them go so that God's good will can come through. If there is, then all can change and all of the good of God can come to us. Everything can become anew, and our whole life is blessed by God. Now, you have spent your whole life waiting to get to this point in your personal story. When a couple gets married, we expect it to be the finest times of their lives, and it should be. But how about you? Right now should be the finest time in your life, too. You've lived too many years. You've invested too much time. And you've been here too many Sundays with us for it not to be so. What is happening outside of you might appear a bit scary. We all have challenges. So let us go beyond our other challenges and enter through this spiritual doorway with an assurance of hope, because we know we are not alone. If we accept the promises of Jesus the Christ and the promises of many spiritual traditions, we know that we are walking forward all the time to greater and greater and greater good in our lives. Now, I want to share something that was written by Herbert Hoover. He was president of the United States, and he faced economic conditions worse than at any other time. And while he certainly did not solve them, he certainly had the faith in the ability of the American people to do so, right? Right. So now, and he wrote this idea of the uncommon man. And what he says here is that, in my opinion, there's been too much talk about the common man. It has been dinned into us that this is the century of the common man. The idea seems to be that the common man has come into his own at last. Thus, we are in danger of developing a cult of the common man, which means a cult of mediocrity. But here is at least one hopeful sign. I have never been able to find out who this common man is. In fact, most Americans, and especially women, will get mad and fight if you try calling them common. He goes on to say, this is hopeful because it shows that most people are holding fast to an essential fact in American life. We believe in equal opportunity for all, but we know that this includes the opportunity to rise to leadership. In other words, to become uncommon. He goes on to say further, let us remember that the great human advances have not been brought about by mediocre men and women. They were brought about by distinctly uncommon people with vital sparks of leadership. Many of these great leaders were, it is true, of humble origin, but that alone was not their greatness. It is a curious fact that when you get sick, do you want a common doctor, Jean?
No, I want an uncommon
You
doctor.
want an uncommon doctor. And if your car breaks down, what kind of mechanic do you want?
An uncommon one.
Okay. And when we get into war, we want a dreadfully uncommon admiral and an uncommon general. I have never met a father and a mother who did not want their children to grow up to be uncommon men and women. May it always be so. For the future rests not in mediocrity, but in the constant renewal of every phase of our life. And I will add to that, that it means that we want to be uncommon. We don't want to be mediocre. And so it does. When you travel around this country, you see statues of people. You see statues all the time, but these are never, ever statues of common people. These are statues of people who have gone the extra mile, who have stepped out of their comfort zone, stepped out of mediocrity. And I believe with God's help, these people have done something really great. So may it be said of you, beginning now, that you become uncommon. And there'll be many around you who might say things negative about your future. You decide to become uncommon, but people around you might say that because of your problems, you just might as well accept your fate. But you stand up and you become uncommon by walking through a spiritual doorway to God's greater help and God's greater good. There are many around you who are doomsayers. Doomsayers are common people. You will find 13 people who are doomsayers in every dozen, and they will tell you the worst possible thing about your future. Don't believe it. They are common people. You start to become uncommon when you say, I can become better than my past with God's help. There's one thing in this world of recycling that we cannot recycle. And what would that be?
That would be the calendar.
The calendar, yes. We can't recycle the past. And how we wish we could, but it's impossible. But you can by going into this whole new doorway of the spiritual future. Stand up and decide to become more than you've ever become before. Now, that sounds like it's difficult, but it's not when you turn to that all knowing presence, that spiritual energy that we call God. Never, ever go into any day, this day, or any future day alone. Realize that many times you are stretched way beyond your human limits, and the past may have absolutely fatigued you, and you need greater strength than ever before. You have to allow God to help you. You must consent to becoming one with God, and then it becomes so. Part of our consenting is having self-confidence. It is said that we have to love our neighbors as ourselves, and most of us, as good humans, love our neighbors, but we often do not love ourselves or our own lives. Remember that you are the channel for all of God's love and creativity to come through to your outer world. But the channel has to be there in you, for you as you, in order for what it is in the channel to come through. Now, let me repeat that. The channel has to be there in you, for you, as you, in order for what it is in the channel to come through. It is the uncommon woman or man who walk in the way of God's love. You are on a process to make tomorrow's dreams come true by your work today, by standing up and agreeing to be what you were created to be. And a lot of times we have a challenge to find out what we think we have been created to be. I know that back in the 60s and 70s, and I'm dating myself at this point, however, people would go away and it is said that they would go away to contemplate their navel. And they would go on retreat. We call it going on retreat now.
Yeah.
And to be in the silence a lot and to allow the ideas that are God ideas to come to us and infuse our thought processes so that we begin to know who we are. And we are able to stand up and become the greatness that we have been meant to become. So we stand up and agree to be what you were created to be. You see, you are a child of the universe. You are a child of God, a child of all possibilities, a child of love, and a child of power. You are a child with a bright future. Now, Jean, we have 5 things that we can do to become uncommon. So to become uncommon, number 1, the first time this week, I would ask people to write 5 things that they like best and 5 things that they like the least about themselves. So, what do you like best? These are your uncommon areas that you need to work on and become better at bringing those to pass. Okay, and then Jean, what would be our uncommon number 2?
To be uncommon number 2, you become honest with yourself.
Okay.
Assess yourself. What's not working? What are the 5 things that you like least
About yourself?
about yourself that are not working?
That are not working, okay. And then what happens?
To become uncommon number 3, write down 5 things that are really important to you.
Okay.
The 5 things you have a passion for in life, the 5 things you love with all your heart, are things that you don't do as much as you should. You put it off until some other time, like retirement or sometimes in the distant future. You need to be focused on these things today to fortify yourself.
Now that's a splendid idea, and you know, we hear these sad stories sometimes about people who never do anything, and they're waiting perhaps for retirement to come so that they can do anything. So they're not living in the now. We in New Thought encourage you to live in the now moment, not in the future, because what happens, the future is not necessarily promised. it is not necessarily going to happen for you in the way that you think it's going to happen. So we invite you to live as creatively and as wonderfully as you can in the present moment. There are stories about people who retire and within 2 or 3 weeks they have moved on to the next expression of life, and they haven't really done anything.
They didn't do the things they needed to.
Right. They didn't live in a state of happiness, not completing the things that they needed to have completed. So we want you to put a higher priority as you fortify yourself on the things that are really important to you and important to you in the ever-present now. Now, Jean, number 4 is something that we all struggle with, especially when we're teenagers and young adults. And what would that be?
To become uncommon, number 4, write down 5 things that were important to your parents about you.
Okay.
Here's many that often gives us some problems. Many times we spend our whole lives living a dream that our parents had for us. We try to please them, sometimes years after they're gone. Now, not while it's noble to do so, such a thing out of love. There comes a time as an adult that you have to decide what's important to you and start to live your own life. That is the only way you'll ever become uncommon. You are not a digital copy of your mother or your father or anyone else. You are different. There's never been a life or fingerprint or a hair like you in existence before.
And that is so absolutely true. We cannot become digital copies of our parents. And I have to say that a lot of times most of us don't want to be those digital copies because we're stepping into a greater yet to be, so to speak. You know, because life is evolving and we don't necessarily want to live the life that perhaps our parents lived, although it was a good life, but there's so much more to offer. The creative forces in the universe are always presenting more for us to become and to be a part of. And so quite often our parents say, okay, it's safe for you to become a teacher or a doctor. And yet and still, quite often, they are living vicariously through you. And you are not necessarily happy with that vicarious living. So we want you to become uncommon and to be all that you desire to be. And to become that, whatever it is, in a state of love, knowing that the universe, that is God, supports you in becoming that. You have to become what God created you to be. God did not command you to become a copycat. God commanded you to let your light shine, and your light is individualistic. So you have to decide what is important to you, and you have to take an inventory of what is or was important to your parents and decide how much you have done in that category. What is right for you? Find it out. Let that light shine that is you in that area of life. And then, Jean, what would be the 5th uncommon thing?
To become uncommon, number 5, write down some time-oriented specific goals for this new spiritual doorway for you to become uncommon. Goals keep your life on track. If you are in a boat and you have to steer it one way or another to go somewhere, where do you want that boat to go?
Okay.
You have to have a plan. You have to have goals. Otherwise, you will never, ever get to where you want to be.
And that is so true. You must have these goals set up, and I advise writing them down and then kind of checking them off as you go. Now, they all won't happen all at one time, and probably not as quickly as you want them to, because there's a lot of process that goes on there. But just know that once you set the goals out, that you are in a good direction. You're starting to steer your boat in a very positive direction. And so I also invite you to release your past and realize that nobody is perfect. We tend to knock ourselves down when we have something bad happen to us. We have to stop that. There is some good and some bad in every life. As the old saying goes, it goes with the territory. We are God's creation. We are being created and recreated by God, and God's work is not done yet. There's a slogan out there that you see frequently. It says, "Please be patient with me. God is not finished with me yet." Okay? So we are never finished. We are always a work in progress. And we need to go on and become better tomorrow and not constantly relive yesterday by blaming ourselves or knocking ourselves down because we did not live up to our potential in some past bygone era of our lives. We must strive to live up to our potential tomorrow. That is where it matters. We did the best we could in the moment. But now we have the power to go beyond, to go higher, and to become uncommon. In the end, you must follow the whisperings of spirit for you and your God life. You have become one with God's ideas of your potential. You see, your faith will make you whole because you are uncommon. One with God in every word, action, and reaction. And so it's not about going to church, synagogue, or to the mosque or every other spiritual center, but it's about living it. It's about living the life, living the spiritual principles. We must never, ever give up. We will have times when we will fall down. That's just part of living, you see, because we're human. And times when we are completely following the whispers from spirit and become what?
Uncommon.
Yes. And so I invite each and every one of you to invest time in this spiritual path. It is not going to be wasted. Sometimes you're called upon to go the extra mile in your faith. And when that happens, instead of just falling down and quivering on the floor and wondering how you can possibly take any more, you're going to enter into a time of faithfulness and maybe even joy because you're going to know that you are not alone because you and God are one. So I invite you now to join me just for a brief moment in affirmative prayer. And this is the uncommon moment when God is blessing us with a receptive faith and a trusting heart, an illumined mind and a quickened understanding. This is the day of when we become uncommon. We are in prayer this day as a new beginning and a new opening comes in our eternal treasure of the spiritual doorway of opportunity which lies before us. We realize that we are existing in abundant good that is around us like air, like fresh air. This is our spiritual moment to be free and whole. We arise and we lift up all old thoughts of neglect, of hopelessness and helplessness, on which any belief in weakness may have laid, and we walk with the new power unbound into Christ's consciousness. This is the uncommon era for us to accept the good that has been prepared for us. Eyes have not seen nor ears heard, neither have entered into the heart of humans the things which God has prepared for them who love the Lord. This is a spiritual moment for us to look to God as complete supply. We have found God and we have found our all-sufficiency. And so now let us open our spiritual eyes that we may see and spiritually listen with our ears that we may hear the glad tidings. And we spiritually open our hearts that we may understand what God has prepared for us because we love the presence and we love our oneness with God the good. We allow our hearts to be filled to overflowing with love and joy and riches of God. That there is not room for any depressing, unhappy, untrue, or unworthy feelings to remain in us. This is the good day which has come to us, and it is filled with divine treasures for us all. We believe this as we walk towards a path of becoming uncommon people in oneness with God. And so it is. Our
So it
musical
is.
our musical inspiration is This Little Light of Mine by Odetta.
I'm gonna let it shine. There's a little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. There's a little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Yes, there's a little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, shine. There's a little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. There's a little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. May we know that together. There's a little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. There's a little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. There's a little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Everywhere I go. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine, shine. Oh, everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Everywhere I go, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. My room, I'm gonna let it shine. All in my room, I'm gonna let it shine. All in my room, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. This little light. This a little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine. This a little light, this a light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, shine. This little light of mine. I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine, let it shine. Brother.
We are so thankful for that music this morning. Letting your light shine takes you to your uncommon nature as you allow your inner light to shine, and that is being exactly who you are in the grand scheme of things, and letting your light shine, doing the things that you were created to do. And so we allow that to be our truth this morning. We have a few prayer requests here, and Jean's going to share those with you.
Join with me now as I recognize that God is our source. Everything that we have flows from that oneness that we have in God. Each one of us is a divine expression of the God source. And as I speak my word today for Pam, for Molly, for Mark, for our planet, for Patty, for Bill, for Luthien, for Rick, for Les, for Cheryl, and June and family, I know that everything that is needed for each person is here now. That we have divine wisdom, right order, love, peace, joy, wellness, good health, and everything that is needed, including perfect harmony, is theirs now. And I know this to be the truth of perfection for each person that I speak my word for. And for this, I say thank you, God. And I release these words knowing that it's done. And so it is.
And so it perfectly is. That is wonderful. Thank you. And you can submit your prayer request to us by going to our Facebook page. Is that
Go to our
correct?
Facebook page. Wake Up Awareness on Facebook. Visit us. I love seeing the comments. We respond pretty fast.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So you can find that, and we are accepting any comments that you have about what we're doing here. We enjoy our work, and because it's work to a certain extent, but it's passionate work. It's what we enjoy doing. And Jean and I both are practitioners of religious science. So that simply means that we've committed our lives to professional prayer work. And we are truly excited about doing that. There's nothing more powerful than extending a prayer for someone's needs, whatever they appear to be. So we try to release the idea of need and simply know that it is taking place right here and right now. Is that correct? That's what
It
we
is.
do. That's what we do. Also, just as information for all of you here, I want to throw out actually a shout out to Cheryl this morning and to John and to Jackie and for everybody who is listening to us. We are grateful that you are listening to our program and that you like what we have to say. So we invite you to continue doing that. Jean, would you be able to share our affirmation?
I would love to.
Okay.
All righty. I affirm that this is an uncommon day for me and I accept my good.
All right. I affirm that this is an uncommon day for me and I accept my good. We are all uncommon when we do the things that we have been created to do, or when we just simply start to do the things that come to our mind, things that are worthy of our thought, things that are legal. When we do those wonderful things, then we know that we are expressing the uncommon nature of our lives. It's not that we will have statues erected in our honor, not all of us, but we will also know that we simply have lived the uncommon life, which is very good. So that means that we haven't stepped into mediocrity, but we've lifted ourselves as well as those around us out of that common nature and become the uncommon individual. So we give thanks for that. So now, as we listen briefly in the background to Eddie Watkins singing to us, I Fly, I have another prayer to share with you briefly as we close our program today. Every day, from dawn to the setting of the sun, God is and always has been. This one life that is God's life is our life now. It is perfect and dwells within the being and within the structure of each one of us. We affirm our gratitude for all that takes place in our lives and realize that we are solely connected to our higher power as God. Our lives have renewed meaning as we allow God to work through us as us. This is the day when we become uncommon. We are in prayer this day as a new opening comes in our eternal treasure of the spiritual doorway of opportunity. And that doorway is always open for us. We realize that we are existing in abundant good that is around us like the very air that we breathe. And so we stand poised on the threshold of a spiritual frontier. God is already walking ahead of us, preparing our way for the good. We continue to offer prayerful support for all leaders, for all world leaders, knowing that they are transformed as they lean not to their own understanding, but rely solely on whispers from Spirit. And so this day we continue to live in wonder and awe of the blessings bestowed upon this great nation, and we are thankful for the grace that has been bestowed upon us as emissaries of pure spirit. And that grace continues to abide in our land, which is a grateful nation and an always great nation. And I release this word to the law, knowing that these words are not compromised, but knowing that it is done. And so it is. And so it perfectly is. Amen and amen. And we look for you next week.
Next week.
Thank you for being with us.
Also, you can have us anytime you'd like on YouTube, on our YouTube channel of Wake Up Awareness. Have a wonderful week, everyone.
Thank you.
Your NBC Sports Radio update starts now. Antonio Brown has finally found a new home. The Steelers agreeing to trade the wideout to the Raiders for a 3rd and 5th round pick. In addition, Brown gets a new 3-year deal worth up to $54.125 million with $30.125 guaranteed. It's the first trade for new Raider general manager Mike Mayock. So for those keeping score at home, the Raiders over the past year essentially traded away Khalil Mack, Amari Cooper, a 3rd and a 5th round pick this year, a 2nd and a 6th round pick in